And we're live.
I love the intro.
Is that cool?
Yeah, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so boring compared to all of these people. How is this gonna go?
Well, my tips for being in the intro is you've got to do lots of hand movements and things. So if you do like this occasionally on the show, that can you might make the intro when I redo it in a couple of.
Very animated. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I want to introduce Amine, and I am so excited because today we are chatting with the founder and creator of ADHD Doers community. He is from Morocco, but he actually resides in France. And as everyone knows who listens in often, we love to invite friends from around the world to enter into discussion and dialogue with us. We just believe it's really important to be able to chat with people outside our bubble, outside our comfort zone. And me having ADHD, I am extremely excited to have Amine today who can talk to us about his community. And I'm really interested in what he says about ADHD because he's a big advocate for showing kind of the superpower and the success behind ADHD. And, you know, not all of us learn the same way. Not all of us have the same kind of personalities, but ADHD is actually, I like to say, a superpower. Other people don't like that language, but basically there's no box with ADHD, right? I mean, like
I mean, well, for every type of people, like they're going to have superpowers and they're going to have weaknesses in some other things. So the key generally is just putting yourself in the right environment that fits you, and putting yourself around good inputs, good triggers, and setting yourself up for success, basically. And a lot of people, unfortunately, their model of life is just exactly how it has been set by people that are that were before them or that are around them. But what we try to do is to actually show a new way of doing things and doing it differently, basically.
Mm-hmm. I want to get into what ADHD is because a lot of our audience may not know. I want to get into maybe late diagnosis, what that looks like, and how you can be successful with ADHD. So let's start from the beginning and kind of set a groundwork. What exactly is ADHD?
So ADHD is basically attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So before we had like ADD and ADHD, now it's just ADHD. And the other type, like now it's called ADD is called ADHD with inattentiveness, basically. So it's a series of symptoms, to put it bluntly, a series of symptoms that could be dysfunctional for living your life in a normal way. So you might forget your keys several times throughout the day, or even you might set alarms and you might not care about the alarms. You might just do anything and everything that is just counterintuitive or counterproductive, while you are conscious that it's not the right thing to do, but you just fall into it. So it could be described in many ways, but it's basically, for a lot of people, it can be a diagnosis that can really make them lose their confidence in themselves and make them lose their joy of life and their peace of mind.
Yeah.
So.
And so you founded this. Well, let me read what you sent me because I think this is really interesting.
Yeah.
You said, I founded ADHD Doers community, which I love that name, by the way, ADHD Doer Community, about 2 years ago. Our goal and mission is to help guide ADHDers navigate clearly unsuitable current world order successfully so that they can live worry-free, that ADHD might ruin their life, and instead embrace the unique strengths that it comes with while minimizing the impact of the weaknesses it can cause. Let's talk about the strengths of ADHD. What are some strengths that those of us with ADHD might have?
Oh my God. So I love talking about this. So the strengths that we could have as ADHDers, they could differ from person to person, but they're generally around what is gives you flexibility of thought, what gives you flexibility of movement. So we see a lot of ADHDers that are successful in sports. We see a lot of ADHDers that are successful in creative work, designers. So for example, when I want to hire a designer, I always really look for an ADHDer, really, like, because they get how I think, and they also create something that exceeds your expectations all of the time. At least that's my experience. And entrepreneurship, for example, is one thing that they excel at. And just the other day, we interviewed a professor who did a lot of research about the link between ADHD and entrepreneurship. And he has a lot of data that suggests that ADHDers can really succeed massively on a large scale in entrepreneurship. And well, there are. I don't want to just keep saying that it's great in terms of this and that. But because there are going to be a lot of challenges too, especially in the beginning, to just stick to that momentum, to just give your time or yourself a little bit of time to love the thing you want to do, and to start navigating it. And unfortunately, that's what's hard when you have ADHD. It's starting projects and just giving yourself some time to get used to the workflow, etc.
The lack of is what we struggle with, right?
Yeah. So there's because also there's one other thing I want to talk about. So it's creativity, and that's what's great about ADHD. So when you're inattentive a lot, when you're always thinking about something else, it just only makes sense that you're going to notice things other people don't notice. But it's also going to make sense that you're going to produce things that other people might not be able to produce, because the way creativity works is just gathering data, inputs, and then transforming it into something else. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when you're gathering data that is totally different from what normal people are just going to notice, well, of course you're just going to make something that is totally different from what other people are going to create. Mm-hmm. So that's one singular superpower I believe in, because I I have a lot of hard drives. I have a lot of storage, but they're always full because it's like having a machine inside. I don't know if you feel the same, Christelle, but it's like having a machine that is producing ideas again and again and again. And with my friends, for example, whenever they talk about something, and because I love business, and they just want to talk about this idea, they tell me, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Do you think it's good or not? And I literally create their whole career and their success enough events that are going to come right away, because it's always just easy to navigate when you have a surge of creativity. So yeah,
your brain is on at all times and it never turns off. No, I describe it as imagine having a billion Post-it notes in your brain at all times, all different colors. And I only say 1% of the things that are happening in my head at all times. And you might actually get like the random Post-it note that fell off, whereas I already had like a whole conversation in my head. So by the time you hear it, you're like hearing the middle part of the conversation. Do you relate to this?
Yeah, I relate to this, and I also relate to the fact that when you have so many post-it notes and you just want to talk to someone, and the moment you want to talk to someone, you want to talk about all of these things, so you end up really not talking about anything at all. It's crazy. It's crazy, and sometimes it makes me, to be honest, like right now, it makes me realize, should I really start becoming the face of my brand and talking about about my brand and helping people, like just putting myself out there, or should I bring someone to put himself like as the face of the brand? Because it's just super hard, to be self-aware. I watch a lot of the videos that I make, or interviews that I do all the time, just so that I can start developing this awareness, which a lot of us lack. And that's why you find also a lot of ADHDers who interrupt people, who just never shut up.
On that
talking.
You have something you'd like to add?
I've got a question for both of you. When we'll start with Christelle, to stop you two arguing. When did you first discover you had ADHD, and what was the thing, or what were the things that kind of gave it away, so to speak?
Gave it away. Okay, so I actually knew I had ADD. I self-diagnosed myself. And then I went to a doctor and they said, no, you don't have ADHD, you have anxiety. And I was like, oh gosh, I know I have ADD by now. And you know what's funny is two things happened when I was about 35. One of my best friends is a special ed teacher. She was a special ed teacher. And she's like, Christelle, you have ADHD. I was like, how do you know? What? She's like, just trust me, you do. And I was okay. And something else happened. A really good friend of mine from high school said, I want you to start following my wife's blog. And her whole expertise is ADHD. She has ADHD. I have ADHD. My whole family has ADHD. Start following this. So I started following. I related to the stories. I knew I had ADHD. I finally got officially diagnosed around that time. I was like 35, 36. I was finally officially diagnosed with it, which I already knew. How do you know? You just know. You don't think like the rest of the world. You know that your focus isn't there. And I would have looked more like ADD because as a child, I was inattentive. Things like I can't even tell you the amount of times I had my hearing checked and my hearing was fine. And it was basically, I just lacked focus and I wasn't paying attention to what was happening, things like that. And it's a common story with ADHD kids. I've heard that after knowing that this is common, I was like, okay, I'm normal in that world. But and then I am able to go into hyper focus mode, which means I can do the job of about 20 people at once, or I completely lack focus. So I'm like 5,000% or 0%. That's very common with ADHD. And so I kind of researched ADHD myself, started kind of meeting ADHD people, looked at some of the experts, and that's it. I mean, it's a superpower and it's a struggle. Because it's a superpower and you go into that 5,000% mode, it's a struggle when you're at 0%. And it's really interesting talking to other ADHD people and sharing stories. It helps you realize you're not alone and like you're actually not crazy and you're awesome. And we just learn different. We experience the world different. But Amine, I want to hear your story about it.
Interrupt and Amine, have a go.
Just one thing, because I forgot to talk about hyperfocus, which is actually something that is very prominent in an ADHDer's life. When you reach that hyperfocus, that flow state, you're able to reach it more than others when you're interested about something. And what we notice is, for example, with kids, they lack in focus, etc. But sometimes they just do whatever sport they love, or they play some video game, or they have a subject in which they receive a lot of positive feedback or positive reinforcement, and they just excel at it nonstop, like they're good and they're making moves. So it's a very common superpower, and a lot of kids, unfortunately, like their parents do not think about that side. Where can my son, for example, excel? And instead they just keep trying to really make, and I was a victim of this. So they try to keep really make him fit in side, so that just so that they could later on say that, oh well, my kid got 17 out of 20 in this subjects, and my kid is a smart, because I lived this, so that's why I'm talking about this. It's kind of irritating, but I mean, thank God I have inattentiveness too. So whenever my parents, for example, try to do something like this for me, I was dreaming. I did not listen.
You have your hearing checked too. That was me. I'm like, jump off.
Yeah. So
your story
about my diagnosis. Yeah. Well, actually, I was. I guess I have both ends of the spectrum. So I have inattentiveness, and I could have hyperactivity too. So as a kid, Morocco, no one knows about ADHD either way. So just growing up as that shy kid, because I have the inattentiveness, so I just didn't feel like it, not shy. But then after like having people tell me that I was shy, I started like putting it as my personality. But then like shy kid, once I get used to the environment, etc., I became the kid that doesn't stop. And it was a disaster, because the way I saw myself was that I was a very nice kid, and I was really nice. But the way the teachers saw me or something like that was that I was a troublemaker, and they just tried to force that on me. And growing up, no problem. I don't know. School was easy, I guess. And but I don't remember anything that I actually studied. It was always like before the exams. And what was funny is, for example, I was so inattentive that I always loved to stay inside of my head and dream. That whenever we had to write something, I had to just hold the pen and act like I was writing, but then like really keep on with this fantasy that I had in mind. Always happening. So at 17, because my father is a surgeon, and I was starting to really want to become, to think about my future. And the thing that I thought I would do was that I would become a surgeon too and do medical studies. But what I noticed is, for the first time of my life at 17 or 16, I tried to study. I couldn't. I sat in the classroom. I sat in the front, right in front of the teacher, and I managed to somehow, right when he started to talk, think about something else. It was really looping. Like, now you should focus. 20 seconds later, I'm thinking about something else, and then I'm telling myself, why am I not focusing? Okay, so let's focus again. And 20 seconds later, I'm focusing on the fact that I should focus, not on the actual topic. So it was hard. That's really scared me, because I really started to become concerned, and I started looking on Google, etc. And I found out then that I surely had ADHD, because with my way of losing focus, it was surely ADHD. And when I knew that it was ADHD, I basically started reading about it. I got obsessed with it, and I got hyper focused on it for 2 years. And this is where I made a little mistake. And I suggest other people who just got diagnosed maybe don't make it. And that is, don't really. So in blogs, the way blogs work now, if you look for ADHD, they try to appeal to people by talking to the pain, to the thing that is going to scare them most. So that it's clicks. It's a business. They want more clicks, and they're going to like the news basically. So they're going to find that specific thing that is going to make them get hooked on the website. And I kept over obsessing on those things that I then developed, just kind of like this personality where I was doing nothing and then saying that I have ADHD, I cannot start. I have ADHD, I'm not even going to start. I'm not even going to bother. And for a while, this was super destructive. And until finally I forgot about ADHD and I had a new obsession, which was e-commerce. I started like obsessing about e-commerce. And after a while, after e-commerce, I did an agency for outsourcing. And after that time, I was thinking about, well, I need to find who should be my ideal audience, my ideal, customers. And I was like, people with ADHD, because I would be my ideal customer, because I hire a lot of assistants, a lot of freelancers. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna create a group. And then from the group, people loved it, and then I just stopped the agency and I wanted to just do something else. We were in the process of actually building an online school, the academy, the ADHD Doers Academy, if you've heard about it, which will be online. And in there, I want to really give some tangible values to people, not just help them hire virtual assistants. So that's my story.
No, this is fascinating. Tell us about ADHD Doer Academy. Is that what you're going to call it? ADHD?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to call it. Yeah. We actually have already started like pre-sale, and we have some customers now. But the promise is that, so let's just assume you have ADHD, Christelle. You have ADHD, Christelle. Let's just assume. So you have ADHD. I mean, if you can get as much help as possible when you have ADHD, just take it. It's going to be good for you. So if you can have access to a doctor, if you can have access to a therapist, if you can have access to a coach, behavioral coach, a mindset coach, etc., that would be great. But the problem is that it would cost too much, to have all of these people talk to you. But it wouldn't just cost too much in terms of money, but it would cost too much in terms of effort and time, because always you have to only schedule 1 hour's calls with people. And when you have those 1 hour calls, you have ADHD and you see your schedule and you see that you have a call scheduled and you're like, oh my God, I really just prefer I just continue whatever I'm doing. So what I thought I would do is bring in all of those experts, qualified experts. We like next year we plan to have, a dating coach, emotional quotient, an EQ practitioner, and have a lot of these people that are going to help. But for now, we have a doctor, we have a mindset coach and behavioral coach, and a nutritionist, and also so I said therapist and doctor. Mm-hmm. I said them. But anyway, we have them, and all you have to do instead of paying $20,000 a year on all of these people and investing 120 hours per year on that too. We want to create a school in which we would do it at $300 a year. So that's only a fraction, but you'll have access for free once you have the membership to all of these experts in live videos. Ask your question, get your answer later. And the more we grow, I plan to just hire a lot of people who are just going to hang around in chat, and they're going to answer questions, to have live support right away. But I mean, it needs a lot of money so that we could make it happen that way. So we're starting this way, which also needs a lot of money. We're stressing out right now. But I mean, once it will grow, I'm pretty sure people are just going to love it. It's going to be the ADHD paradise.
Yeah, sure. You're starting with your Facebook page. Is that what you're doing? You have your Facebook page. You have a podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we have a podcast. We have an Instagram. that we are pretty active on, and we have the Facebook group. Yeah, podcast Facebook group, and also YouTube. I just hired someone to work with so that I could do documentaries on successful ADHDers. So this week we're actually going to have one on multi-millionaire entrepreneur in the aviation world. And what we want to really do with these videos is, if any 16, 17-year-old guy is watching and is about to give up, like I was,
Yeah.
he should watch that, he should watch that and then have hope again, that he could make something out of himself in the future. Because my only way out of this, negative spiral was that I had read one article on Forbes titled ADHD, the entrepreneur's superpower. Before that, I didn't even know that entrepreneurship was a thing, actually.
Yeah.
So that saved me. The article saved me, and I really want to start doing the same that same moment that changed my life. I really want to multiply it into thousands per day, basically.
So, what proportion of the population do you reckon has ADHD, and how many people are diagnosed? I was looking for the word there.
I cannot really give you like a clear. I don't know. I think 6% in the US, but I mean there's a big lack of research in regards to ADHD, and a lot of people are uninformed with it. So a lot of people are also undiagnosed. And the further we get away from the USA and Europe, the worse it gets.
Yeah,
like it's not even on the radar in other places. So yeah, I mean, as a kid, it was really problematic. As a teenager, it was really problematic, super problematic. So, but I had these flashbacks. So, for example, at 15 years old, I was doing pranks on YouTube. I was doing public pranks and just basically embarrassing myself. And I was starting to get popular in my city, very popular in my city. I had fans. So imagine a 15-year-old guy walking around and then having a 17-year-old guy talk to him. So that looked like a bigger guy than you, and telling you, "Hey, can I take a picture with you?" It was it was weird, but I didn't continue. And I wish, there was just this awareness that, because I wish I had known before that I had ADHD, so that at least when I have the thought of doing something else or giving up, I'm gonna be like, that's one symptom. It's not continuing on projects, so I need to stick to it. And that is one of the mistakes ADHDers make, that makes them end up doing struggling, basically. So that wasn't the case, but I mean, I can't complain. I love the way everything went. I love the fact that I didn't continue, to be honest, because I love this so much more than doing pranks. I didn't like it so very much, a lot, when I was doing it, because there was a little bit of stigma too, and I can't live with something that is stigmatizing people. So, for example, it was a stigma for my mother, who was telling me, "Do you want to be a clown? Did I give birth to a clown?" I was like, "What's wrong with clowns?"
That's funny.
I love them. Yeah.
That's funny. So I'm very intrigued about, you're going to interview successful ADHDers, doers, because you're right. When we see someone else being successful, it's very inspiring and it brings hope. I'm curious, because you said you want to give hope to men, and being a woman, I'm going to have to interject. Do you have any inspiring ADHD woman that you might bring onto your show as well?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're always just messaging people, men or women, so that we could talk to them. But I mean, I don't know. We just don't get a lot of replies from women. They just don't give us time. I don't know if they don't relate to us or not. I actually have this issue right now where I want to try to learn how to maybe connect to women too. Maybe, but it's definitely on the radar. We already interviewed a hugely successful engineer that is a woman, and we have a few scheduled podcasts with a designer and a couple of influencers. So it's all around, play things that you need to be creative in order to succeed. So engineering, for example, what she's doing is basically working on creativity and then inventing something out of scratch, and designer that is the same thing. And influencers, they have some crazy pictures, those the influencers, and they're very different than what we just see out there. So that's something definitely that we're focusing on, because we don't want to just talk about guys, because and the people who need the most help actually in this whole world are women more than guys, because a lot of women, first of all, they don't get diagnosed that easily, because most of them have the inattentive type, and they're like, oh no, you can't have ADHD because you're just you don't make noise, you're not super active, etc. And yeah, that's about it.
Well, you're right. It's oh, Tim, I'm interrupting. Sorry. Did you?
No, I was just saying, can we talk a bit more about the different types of ADHD? And maybe you can tie in what you were going to ask with that question, Christelle.
Well, there is, to my knowledge, there's just there are subtypes, but like the main types is it's like with personalities, basically. You're either the inattentive type, the hyperactive type, or you have a little bit of both. And it's just like that. Like there are some subtypes that I do not get into, because I'm not into like the medical stuff or giving people advice into which medication they should get, or whether they should get medication or not. We try to keep it about practicality. So here's where you're most based on the research, here's where you're most likely to succeed, and here are the systems, the structure, and so on, that you need to implement inside of your life so that you can increase your chances at succeeding. Because as you know, life is all about luck, and since life is all about luck, we have a little bit of control in order to increase that luck. The more we put ourselves in the right places, the more we bring the right things to us, the more chance we seem to have, the more luck we seem to have. So yeah, that's what we're mostly about.
Yeah. You mentioned how environment might affect ADHD. Do you want to kind of expand upon that?
Yes. Could you just give me 30 seconds? Something. So sorry.
No, you're okay. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to talk about I'll just talk about what I was going to ask him. It's true what he said about women and men. Often the misconception growing up, especially my age, is more boys were getting diagnosed with ADHD. And it's because it looked like the little boys had the hyperactive ADHD experience, and they were known as being rambunctious rather than, oh my goodness, these boys are highly intelligent, they think outside the box, they're creative. Whereas the woman like me often, and I am a little bit stereotyping here, but often we kind of skated under the radar because we had the inattentive type, like Amine said. And so we looked like we were in our heads. We were daydreamers. Why can't you, I heard all the time, why can't you focus? Why are you doodling all the time? Why are you, and the truth is, if ADHD people are interested in what they're doing, they're going to be the most efficient and best worker you can possibly imagine. But in school, the typical school isn't set up for ADHD or other.
The typical school isn't really set up for anything.
Exactly. So once I found like my perfect way of learning, I was awesome. Like, but if it's the typical school where I'm being lectured at, Amine described me exactly. The amount of times I have to tell myself to focus. Oh, you're leaving. Focus. So that's pretty typical for a woman. And I hate that I'm stereotyping this, but I'm just saying that's probably why women for so long skated under kind of the radar, whereas for some reason the boys, and it can go both ways. I think it's probably 50-50 as far as ADHD goes, but yeah, I mean, let's get into the environmental.
Yeah, I just wanted to say just one thing. In the typical school, sometimes you meet some teachers or some people who really make you love something. For example, as a kid, I was basically not good at a lot of things, but it depended on the teacher. I was either super good at math and science or super bad, depending on the teacher. And it would always vary every year. And sometimes I would just lose confidence. Sometimes I'm like super good. But there's one thing that I had not stopped or kept excelling at through school, and that is English. And at school, for example, because English is our third language, we learn French, we learn Arabic, and then English. And the thing is, with English, what happened was I had a teacher who, the first time I met a teacher, I had a teacher who was not Moroccan. She was, I think, Indian, and she traveled around the world. She was very compassionate and very nice. And what happened was I was a little bit lucky that my father was learning English a little bit before. So I had just gone over a few of the words with him because I loved language basically. And I was talking to him. And when I talked to this teacher, when I had an exam with this teacher, I had the best grade. And she told me, "You're very good. You should continue like that." I spent the year just like this, having this positive reinforcement. And I spent it this way until I was at around 15 years old, where I changed school and I found the worst teachers in there. And I just stopped speaking English at all. Like I just really stopped. Like at school, my hyperactivity in English class was unwelcomed. Because when I loved the topic, I was hyperactive, and when I didn't love it, I didn't. So when I was hyperactive, some teachers welcomed that and used it as a source of energy for the whole classroom, and some teachers just made me stop. And that was a huge problem, because when I stopped speaking English, I had lost, a lot of the basics for a while. I had lost my accent, because I had a really good American accent before, really, like as a kid. I had a very good American accent, and then I stopped speaking like English for 4 years or so until I started like doing ADHD tours again, where I started learning.
Well, you need an English accent anyway. You don't need an American
accent. Can you give me 1 second? My girlfriend is telling me she's in danger, so I need to really see what's wrong with her. She's coming cold.
Okay. I want to expand upon. This is rad. This is so ADHD, honestly. I want to expand upon something he said about school, because this is so common in schools for those of us with ADHD and may not know, or may have not been diagnosed yet, or and it's so important for teachers to remember. One, people with ADHD lack what am I trying to say? Confidence often. Because kind of like what Amine said, you're either highly encouraged by your teacher, or you're told you're too active and you need to be quiet and you're talking too much. And if a teacher can look at someone with ADHD as someone who has a lot of energy and they can bring leadership to the class, and the teacher realizes that, they can teach really good leadership skills to someone with ADHD. Whereas if they silence them and say, you're being bad, you're being this, that, or the other, doesn't work in our classroom, that makes the ADHD student feel less confident.
I think there's an element of this with anybody, though. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty extenuate with ADHD people.
Sorry.
More than anything else. I remember
No,
you
made a really good point. Yeah. And we were kind of expanding on a point you had. I mean,
yeah, I was here and I had one earphone.
That's very common with ADHD. And so if we can change the language to high energy and leadership skills, this student has high energy, and this student brings a lot of energy to the class and has incredible leadership skills, and the teacher is able to kind of hone in on those leadership skills, the child can learn something incredible at a very young age. Yeah. And I think we're moving into that.
Even if they didn't learn it at a very young age, it does not mean that at a late age it would change something. Like they could succeed at both. It's just possible. Like when we say, as a kid, this happened, it shouldn't have happened. We just really talk about the quality of life as a kid would have been so much better. The quality of the emotions as a kid, like it would have been so much better. And that's what I really mean with it. But when we say, for example, when someone, for example, grows up, I just really don't want people to really think that there's no room for improvement anymore. Like you're stuck because your childhood wasn't, you were not raised the right way, or you were not in the right schools that were for you as an ADHD kid. Like there's always a new chance, there's always a new opportunity. That we see a lot of those people, for example, in sales, a lot of ADHDers, they do not find anything to do. They go to sales and they suddenly become the best salesman in the company. And I've heard a lot of these things, and I've even in the research, entrepreneurship and sales are like the top two. Where because mostly like the way you learn in entrepreneurship is you learn by experience and by intuition. So if you're obsessed about it, you're just going to learn more, and you don't have to start as a kid in order to. But in the end, like you have a high reward later on as a salesman or as an entrepreneur, because the reward could be exponential. Like it could be super big.
Yeah.
Well, I think the hyper-focus thing probably comes in really useful for entrepreneurism, because this was a question that came up to me earlier. I forgot to ask.
I
don't mean it's because I've got ADHD, it's just because I'm getting old. But what proportion of your day would you say you're in the hyper-focus state, and what proportion is there's a squirrel? Oh, let's look at that. And is it something you can improve, and does medication help with that?
Well, medication will certainly help when it comes to focus. Like it will not 100%, because there are people that doesn't work, like who does not get to get the positive sides of the medication. But with medication, it's basically what it's going to do. It's going to help you become more focused, more in the moment, more present, and make you notice what others are noticing, because you're noticing always the different things, so you pay more attention to details, etc., which you can miss as an ADHDer, because you like looking at the big picture, and you like moving fast, and that does not always help when you try to find details, or you try to find the little things. But what was the question exactly?
Just like,
did I answer it?
Your time is
of mine.
kind of
so
versus like inattentive, so to speak?
So for me, sometimes, so it depends actually, because sometimes it's really at night. It depends on the period. So I'm so flexible, but I mean it would vary from person to person. That I sometimes would work only at night for a set period, and sometimes I would have a full structure in which I wake up very early, or I wake up at 10, and from 11, for example, to 1 p.m. I would do the creative things, because that's when I'm the most focused. And after that, usually I only have 2 hours of focus in terms of creativity. When I try to schedule those things, it's like, if I want to be consistent with it every single day, I schedule only 2 hours. I don't know what would happen if I do 3 or more, but 2 hours make me feel happy about the day. And then after that, I just do the, answering messages or administrative things. But when I'm like in the chaotic mode, for example, and I just do the work whenever it needs to be done, usually at night, I feel better at night. And sometimes I could pull off a whole night where I would just do one single thing, and I might not be able to repeat it the next day because I'm just like at 0%. It's I don't know. It would really vary from person to person. So, for example, when I work with someone or something like that, I really try to make him remember how his best days are. We try to track how his or her old days, past days were. So if they felt better, we need to track what they did the previous night, what they ate, when did they sleep, etc., etc. Or if they had a specific event that made them feel better as a person or something like that. Because sometimes just feeling better about yourself makes you do better job. And we really encourage people to just start increasing that self-awareness, because it's super important. When you start learning who you are and you start becoming certain of how you are, you suddenly have more confidence to reject what social norms have to force on you. So when someone tells you, no, that's not how things are done, you need to do it this way. When you know yourself and you know how you are, you're not going to care. You're going to say, yeah, I have to do them this way, but I do them this way. And you're not going to, if you want the best results, I'm going to do them this way. And it takes some, a lot of confidence, which can only be gained by learning more and more about yourself, to actually start rebelling against the system that is currently ruling the world. It takes some balls.
It does, because again, ADHD often looks so far outside the box, and doesn't necessarily conform to society norms, and yet the creativity that's possible there is abounding. And so I mean, give some advice to a newly diagnosed adult with ADHD. What is your advice?
So my advice to someone who has just gotten diagnosed is to first of all, do not care about those first articles that come out when you Google ADHD. The ones that are destined to make you feel even worse. It's like when you suspect you have a sickness, and you write the symptoms on Google, and then you end up actually terrified. You're like, oh my God, I have cancer. And then you go to the doctor. It's not. It's like the same thing. When you read about ADHD from that specific point of view, it makes you feel better about yourself because you don't feel alone. But it does not show you anything on the other side of ADHD at all. Like, you have to keep digging. And if you ever started like reading about these things, you got to read about the other side for sure, and you got to put yourself around the community of ADHDers, especially like if you go into one that is toxic, remove it. But if you go into one that is, positive, that is helpful, that is showing you how to, where you could really ask thorough question and have great support from it and great answers from it, yeah, that's a great one to stay in. And apart from that, you need to create now that you know you have ADHD, learn about yourself, etc. But you need to start creating a structure, create a system that works for you and you only. It's going to take time, but it's very worth in the end. Because if you do not create a system that really works for you, you'll always be struggling to follow other people's systems, because you're the guy or girl that does not fit. So create where you fit on your own. That is what I really mean about environment. Create, like, when you're in your house, create do things exactly how they would fit you. Like if you want to for example, eat on plastic dishes, because due to plastic dishes, for example, you would be able to stop doing the dishes, and from that you will feel very happy about yourself. Do it. Don't keep telling yourself, but no, everyone does it without the plastic dishes, so I gotta do it too. But then end up a week later with a mountain of dishes and a lot of stress coming with it. You know what I mean? Do things your own way.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to say actually, like, I put a link to a QR code to your Facebook group down in the corner. Anybody's been wondering what the hell that was. So if you if you're watching this on YouTube, on the TV or a computer, you can get your phone up, and that will take you to Amine's Facebook group, ADHD Doers Community. So it's a bit of a pain in the neck joining a Facebook group on a phone, but that's a whole another matter.
Yeah. It's such a neat group. What you've told us about the school that you're starting, what is your goal with ADHD Doers Community aside from the school you're starting?
So let's take a little moment and kind of realize the opportunity cost of ADHDers, of a lot of ADHDers not succeeding or not doing anything with their lives. Because with ADHD, you're just either going to be super successful or you're going to be, super struggling. Because if you're struggling, if you're already on that side of the spectrum where you're struggling and you don't have a lot of money to pay a lot of help, a lot to outsource a lot, etc., it's hard to get yourself out of the struggle. But what was the question? I'm so sorry.
Well, let me reword it. Where do you see ADHD doers going? How can this help people like me, ADHD people?
Yeah. So a lot of those people, as I was saying, they go there and they do not do anything important with their life. They do not, like, when I say important for them. Now, if, as you know, with ADHD doers, if we were able to just, 30% of the people who are going to be diagnosed, if we just made those 30% actually find out what their strengths are, or find out where do they fit the most, where do they do the best. I mean, in the long term, like, imagine the impact that this would have. It would just create so many, not only riches in the world, but it could also, someone, for example, could from being a homeless and finding our videos or whatever we make and gaining this self-confidence and then doing something with themselves, like, it could lead to a great invention that could maybe lead to the discovery of a cure of cancer or something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just talking about the opportunity costs, where a lot of ADHDers right now, they're not getting the attention they need, and we want to fill out this gap. So we increase the chances of people night.
Is he frozen for you as well?
He's frozen for me. Oh, okay. So he's frozen, but we're not. Let's give him a second. I love that he's creating a community, because I am in quite a few ADHD groups. Let's see if he comes back. I'm in quite a few ADHD groups, and I can tell that the group he's created, ADHD Doers Community, is very motivating. And it talks about how you can succeed. And he's very uplifting versus a lot of the other groups that I'm in. It's let's keep talking about all the things that we can't do and how we're struggling, and that doesn't do people like us any good. So yeah. I think the difference I've noticed with his group is he keeps bringing tools in, and he wants to know how the group can be better, and who can I interview, and what can we do, and I appreciate that about. Oh, we might have lost him forever.
He's going to sign back in again, or guess.
If he comes back.
Or we've annoyed him so much that he.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me because a lot of what you describe, I've had personal experience, but I don't think I've got ADHD, if you know. I think there's an element of it in everybody to some extent.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like I definitely have had. We got him back.
Hello.
You're back. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. My computer just stopped working on its own. I don't know why.
Oh, you're okay. Why were we? Let's see. Where were we going with that? I was
talking about the opportunity cost.
Yeah. And I was telling him what I noticed the difference is in the community that you've created and some of the other ADHD communities I'm in. And I was saying, I really appreciate that you keep it very motivated and you focus on the positive, and you focus on, at least what I've noticed, who can we be interviewing? Who can we be bringing in for inspiration? But if you want to, expand upon your goals for the community and what you're doing and whatever you want to say about your community you've created. Thank you.
So you're totally right. Like before I joined some of the groups, some of the other groups that were out there, and it literally changed my life in a negative way. Mm-hmm. So when you complain, for example, it literally wires your brain so that it can complain more. Like, so that it starts, it becomes part of your life. And when you start complaining, it just increases your chances of becoming anxious and getting depression, etc. And that is not the right way to live life. So the thing is, not only when you complain, but also when you see other people complaining, it has the same effect on you. And when I joined these groups, I was in so the way I see life is like those mountains, those cycles. I was in the peak. I was doing everything right. And I joined these groups. I started seeing the posts, and I got depressed from it. Like, seriously, I lost every. I don't know if it's because I copy energy or something like that, but from these groups, I got the virus of starting to complain, and then from starting to complain, everything went downhill. Because when you're in business, everything goes wrong, and if you do a mistake, you should not complain about it. You should look for the solution. You should say, "Oh, we made a mistake," and then find a solution for it. And once I started complaining, I let myself. I slid. It took me.
Yeah. So that's what I noticed that's different about your group. The focus and the positivity and making sure that people know this is where you can get your inspiration. And what exactly is in your group that we can look at when we join?
So you might mostly want to follow our Instagram right now, because in regards to the group, it's it's something where I just want to really group people with like if you want value, if you want some tangible value, you might want to join Instagram. But I mean, if you want to meet other ambitious people with ADHD, other people who see the positive side, that's where you need to go. Because I was super careful to not accept everyone who did not have a positive outlook on life in general, because it's just contagious. I don't want and I'm really careful of not letting the group become a place where everyone is just complaining about ADHD, because that would be counterproductive. That's why we're not growing at the rate of other groups, because other groups it's easy to bring people in. I could easily bring people in, but I mean, I'm very careful with so if you're basically the ambitious type, etc., you're welcome to the group. And if you're still not sure about it and you still want to learn more about that side, follow us on Instagram, because we share helpful content. We share guides. It's just ADHD doers. That's about it. And yeah.
So where on Instagram can we find you? What is your handle? Is it ADHD doers?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
What is your Instagram handle? Where can we find you?
ADHD doers alone.
Oh, ADHD doers.
Yeah.
Online. Okay. And do you have a Twitter handle?
No, I don't use Twitter.
Okay. So YouTube, where can we find your videos on YouTube?
ADHD doers too.
Awesome.
We have only one video. We have a few podcasts in there, and we have only one video about Richard Branson, and the next one is coming this week, and then next month a third one about Da Vinci.
Richard Branson. So does Richard Branson have ADHD?
Yeah, he has ADHD and dyslexia.
Wow. Okay.
Dyslexia.
Okay. Oh, that's going to be inspiring then. I want to watch that.
Yeah, read his book, because you're going to learn a lot just from his book about how your days are and how your days should be, how you should approach, for example, business, etc. He's exactly the same way we tell people to be. Like, outsource, get some help. Don't do the things just exactly how you see they would fit. Because right by now, a lot of us have developed an anxiety towards doing things perfectly, because you always do the things the wrong way, and then you get positive, negative feedback right away. No, that's not how. So right now we're just afraid to even try to do things our own, because no, I'm just not gonna do it right. There's this anxiety that stops people, but it's something that you can get used to. Start small, start doing the things like in your own way. Start really small. Start getting help from other people. Start making things happen with other people. For example, with ADHD, it's not me alone. We're 5 people, and it's a teamwork.
Very cool. Yeah. That's so good. One cool thing about being ADHD is we're a little bit impulsive, and so we might jump in and just try it, which is good. And it's both, but yeah. So Tim has been really good for me, because he's like, Christelle, let's just do it. Let's just try things. It's good. Amine, I want to say thank you so much for coming on our show. We've run out of time, and we put up where we can find you on Instagram, and we're going to put up your YouTube. Do you have a website that you want us to go to, or do you want us to stick with Instagram and YouTube?
No, just Instagram and Instagram, okay. YouTube, the Facebook group. That would be, that would be great if you want to get introduced to this. Otherwise, I think this live show was super great. Was very informative, and I'm sorry if I talk too much.
Don't apologize. You know how happy it makes me. It makes me happy to talk to people like me. I love it.
Well, I'm like, to be honest, when we interview someone in the podcast and they start talking a lot, it's such a blessing. We're like, thank God we talk to ADHDers, because we don't have to think a lot about the things to ask.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And the energy is incredible. So thank you, Amine, for being here. We really, really appreciate you. And we're going to, Tim, I'm going to let you take take it from here since I keep talking.
Yeah, well, I've just been looking at the time thinking, oh, 4 minutes over. This is like the early days. We had like no time discipline. We just carried on. But yeah, it was great to have you on the show, Amine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll put the link to your Instagram in the comments. I've got the Facebook link to hand, but I will put it in there afterwards. So hopefully you'll get a bit more interest in your Instagram.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think that's it. So thanks for being on the show.
Bye-bye.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.